All right. So this brings into question, right, the whole idea of using interfaces, right? Because the whole point of saying that you implement an interface is that you are guaranteeing somehow, right? You're signing a contract, that you are that you're committing to providing certain implementations for certain methods that are being declared in the interface. I mean, that's the whole point of the interface, right? So you are promising that certain methods will have an implementation, right? And now we were not able to deliver on that promise, right? We are under delivering, right? So this is something that we have to be careful, right? Whenever we use these patterns, these adapter patterns, looking for things that might look, interfaces that might look that are somewhat similar, that I might be able to write one in terms of the other, but when I find myself actually implementing it, I'm only able to implement, like 25% of the actual methods, whereas 75% of the methods I have no equivalent implementation. Yes. So certainly when we apply these design patterns, we're looking for these edge cases. Am I really implementing that interface? Am I able to actually write one in terms of the other? Am I gonna have most of the methods not implementable and just throw exceptions that is not supported, right? So we have to be careful, right? That we don't overpromise that we are going to implement certain methods, but we just can't deliver, right? We cannot deliver the implementation. So where the adapter pattern maybe not, it's not the best, it's not actually applicable here, right? And so there are cases where the adapter pattern just makes no sense, either because maybe some security issues, or maybe you don't, maybe some certain features might be turned off at certain times, or whoever's using that interface might not have the privileges to implement them, or there might be some business logic that just doesn't allow always providing that implementation going forward. So it's very unhelpful for you to implement a particular interface and say that you promise to provide this interface, but instead throw these exceptions. It's very unhelpful. Even if it's reasonable, right? Even if it's very reasonable that there's no equivalence to this method from one interface to the other. So the most sensible thing in those edge cases, is to perhaps even to refuse to implement it, and it might make sense, like this remove example, right? For instance, you might be using a particular interface in the camera API, either in iOS or Android, and you want to use it because you want to implement and connect it to your social media. You're implementing some kind of social media application, but because somebody outside of the system configured and turned off the camera as part of the whole infrastructure, now you don't have access to it, right? So what do you do in those edge cases? You promised that you were going to implement these interfaces, but because something beyond your control, right? The API implementation is not available to you, right? And so even though you had signed or committed to implement these things, is just not available to you beyond anything that you could do, or it might be that your implementation requires certain privileges, right? That they might need access to certain tables, updates and inserts and deletes to certain data structures that just are not available to you, right? Or your particular login might not allow you to access, right? Again, things that go beyond your control, right? So it might make sense to just refuse to implement those things, or use other ways to notify the client that there was some error or inability to use these particular implementations. All right.